Welcome. Today, we are going over how to effectively manage area or territory in SalesRabbit. So we're in the SalesRabbit mobile app. We're going to go ahead and select Sales Hub. To start, what is the high level process of managing area? So the first step would be pre-cutting territory, getting awesome territory ready to be assigned out to reps. So going through and using our data grid overlay maps. If you're in the roofing industry and you have weather, is using weather overlay maps to determine, hey, these are really awesome areas that we should be focusing on. They hit our sales demographic. Once you've determined these are great areas that we should be spending our time, is we're going to go start creating territory. And basically, we're pre-cutting it and we're preparing it to be assigned to our end users. And that is the suggestion, is that an admin or a manager is the one cutting and then assigning rather than reps finding area on their own for two reasons. One is that we want to actually make sure that our reps are working in the right areas, and they may not understand the tools that are available to really find those great areas. The second one, it's time management for the reps. You want your team out selling, knocking on the doors, doing their job, not worrying about, hey, I need to go find a new area. Where do I even go? Where do I begin? It's easier if you have that delineation of responsibility, so they focus all of their time on selling more deals. Now, once I've assigned, the rep's going to go in, work the area. They're going to knock on all the doors. Hopefully, they knock multiple times. They try and talk to as many people as possible. The best rule of thumb is 75 to 80% coverage in an area before moving on to a new area, meaning they should have at least interacted with 75 to 80% of the homeowners or renters in the area. That way that they've covered this area really thoroughly. They've really squeezed all of the juice out of it, and now they're prepared and ready to receive another area. And so from a process standpoint, they're going to do that. You are going to unassign them from the area, which we'll show here in just a minute on how to do that. You'll unassign them from the area. You'll assign them to their new area or two areas, however many you're taking at a time. I definitely recommend not having more than three areas at a time. It becomes overwhelming, and reps are not going to thoroughly work an area very well. So you have reassigned the rep, and then you're basically just going to rinse and repeat that process. Is they'll go through an area that you've assigned to them, and then they're going to leave the area after having worked it and go to a new one. From a territory management perspective, is what do I do with that area once I've unassigned somebody from it? The first thing you're going to look at is, was this an effective area? Did we sell a lot of deals in this area? Or was it high renter, or there weren't very many good leads in this area and we really felt like this wasn't a great area? If it wasn't a great area, we're just going to go ahead and delete that area. We're not going to spend the time, wasting time going back to an area that wasn't very strong. If it was a great area, that's an area that we're going to want to revisit later on. We just have already burned through it a little bit and we want to come back at a later time. And so we'll keep that as an unassigned area, the black areas. And then we'll view the history of that area and come back to it at a later time. The recommendation would be anywhere from 3 to 6 months after the first time visiting it. And then you're just going to rotate your areas of what has been hit and what hasn't been hit every 3 to 6 months to make sure that you're really soaking up the area and trying to stay close in one hub of all the deals. That way you can bandwagon, you can name drop your customers, your leads, your appointments, etc. Okay, so let's put this into actual action. Is how do I click these buttons to do what we're talking about? So the very first thing is actually cutting an area. All we're going to do is use the lasso tool. So we'll scroll into an area. We say, yeah, really like this area. Little finger button over here is I'm just going to circle, square, however you want to do it, the area that I really like. I'm going to choose the office that this needs to be associated with. So we're in Salt Lake. I'm going to click Salt Lake Roofing. And then here it's going to give me an option to assign. So if I'm not ready, if I'm just pre-cutting area, I can just press save at the top right. If I already know this needs to go to a rep, then my list of users or reps will be in that area and I can just add them or assign them. I'm just going to save it. Unassigned areas. always come in this black color. If they have a different color, that means that they're assigned to somebody. Black means that they're unassigned. How do I come back and assign an area? All I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this area. You'll see if it says current and nobody's in here, it means nobody's assigned to it, right? Again, it's black. Past is going to show me the past details, the history of this area. So if there have been 6 people that have been in this area previously, it's going to show them and it's going to show their date ranges. All I need to do is press edit, and then I can select the user that I want. If you get this pop-up, it means that they have too many areas, and so you should assign an area, or else that area is gonna delete another random area. Okay, so now how do I actually find these really great areas? How do I know where I should be cutting these areas rather than just blindly doing it? The first and best tool is using the data grid overlay maps if you do have data grid. Right here, diamond button. I'm going to select that. And what it's going to do is start cutting, pre-cutting area. These are not actually getting cut yet. You have the choice to cut them or not, but it's chunking up these areas based off of data and an algorithm. So if I select this area, it says 6.4, which we'll talk about here in a second what that means. But you're going to see there are 3,700 homes in this area that has chunked up right here. And then what it's doing is it's showing these data points. So right here you have home ownership rate, home ownership and occupy rate, 81%, meaning that this 81% of the people in this area, the 3,700, actually own and live in this house versus an area down here, this red one, we're going to show 33%, right? So there's these different data points and graphics, credit score, square footage of the home on average, how long people have been living in the home, so 10 years, when the home was built, et cetera. So each industry has different standards or different ideal customer profile that they'll be searching for. If you're in the telco industry, you don't really care very much about whether they own the home or not. Versus your roofing and solar is you're not going to be able to sell to a renter. And so it's ideal if you're working in areas that have high home ownership rates. And so 33%, this model is based off of solar and roofing. And so 33%, that makes sense why this is a 3.4 versus my 6.4 over here, 81% home ownership rate. So there's out of 3,700 homes, give or take, there's probably about 2,800 to 3,200 homes here where they actually own the home and they live in the home. Therefore, my opportunity and chance to sell a solar roofing deal goes way up. Now, what do the scores mean? The score just means that there is a higher likelihood or a higher propensity that there are going to be buyers in this area. So the darker red we get, so the oranges, the yellows, the dark reds, those are areas that probably don't fit very well for your industry, versus the darker yellow, the more green, the dark greens, those are your best area, your primaries, the people there will most likely purchase a product, or you have more people that are more likely to purchase the product. So let's say, all right, I really love this area, high homeownership rate, great credit score, really fits the build of what I'm looking for. Is I can hit this little button right here, and it's going to take the area and choose my office, and then it's going to automatically create that area for me. So I know that these are great demographics. I know this is a great area, and it just makes it easier to cut area rather than having to break it down into smaller chunks. If I want to, if I do really like this, but I don't love that 3,700 is the number for the area, it's a lot of homes to give to one rep. What I may do is instead of actually creating that area, as I know this is a demographic, but then I might just go start chunking up small little areas from this, knowing, hey, this is a really great spot. I should be spending a lot of time here. I just want smaller sections. Okay, the last piece of finding gray area is if you are in the roofing industry, very specifically, you care about storm chasing, storm restoration, is I can use my storm overlay maps. So I click that hail, or excuse me, that weather button. I'm going to use the magnifying glass to search. And then I can search based off of very specific parameters. So I want to see certain types of hail sizes. I want to see in 50-mile radius, 100-mile radius in this date range, etc. I can search for high wind gusts. So I have all these different filters. And then when I select that, it's going to spit out events that have happened in that date range based off of the criteria that I gave it. So we'll pretend this is hail size. Salt Lake doesn't get a lot of weather, but when I select it, you'll notice that it's going to start populating weather maps from this date. So I know, okay, there was a lot of hail in this area, and I can get really specific and granular with where it is. So I can start scrolling in. I notice that there's this dark yellow and green, which is going to be right here, meaning a lot of hail hit this area. When you're in higher storm areas, Dallas, Florida, maybe Kansas, etc., you'll have more map options. You'll have a lot more date and weather events. But this way, you can go and pick out this is where it was hit really hard, or vice versa. This area was hit and it was hit hard enough to be passed off through insurance, but it's not a super hard hitting. So maybe less people will have gone there. And so those turn into little gold mines. For example, let's say this right here is like people are really going to focus on this green and yellow. They really care a lot about this. But this blue area was still hit hard enough to where it'll get passed off by insurance. And so maybe I'll cut myself smaller little areas. I'll send out my newer guys that aren't as advanced, and I can go capitalize on still storm hit areas, but they're also going to be less competitive. So thanks for joining us for managing areas. This is one of the most important pieces of being a successful admin and manager in the SalesRabbit platform is creating great areas so we can find more opportunities quicker.